Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the final session of day one of Panel Fest. Huge thanks to AbstraxHops and MarketMyBrewery for all your support on this event. I'm extremely appreciative of all of our panelists for taking time to share their insight. But right now, we've got a lot to talk about. So we're going to dive right into a conversation on future-proofing your brewery and how you can navigate the change. We're going to explore brewing industry pressure points and the solutions to tackle them. But first, let's meet our guest. And Ross, because you are to the right of me, you get to go first.
I'm Ross Hunsinger. I am the Director of Food and Beverage Innovation for AbstraxHops. Kind of oversee the development and implementation of all of our flavor solutions for the brewing and beyond beer industry, and kind of the intersectionality between hops and cannabis.
Love it. Ross, I'm a little curious. What is the yellow poster you have on your wall?
That is a Hold Steady show poster from years ago.
What tour?
That was right after Boys and Girls in America.
That is one of my favorite records of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a win. Cool. We could talk an hour about that one, but Adrian, you're up.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Adrian Hott. I'm the Innovation Manager at Blue Point Brewing Company. I work on different R&D projects and scaling those beers when they're ready for production.
And do you have any good music recommendations today?
I've been on a King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard kick very recently. Their new album is very, very good. Highly recommend.
Good tip. Tyler, your turn.
Hey, I'm Tyler. I'm the R&D manager at Highland Park Brewery in Los Angeles. Basically anything new or different, being product or method, kind of falls under my job. Yeah.
And Tyler, what was the last concert you went to?
Oh, I went yesterday, just a block premiere. I saw a ABBA cover band with my two kids, two boys. They ruled.
We're getting some good music today. That sounds like a blast. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, great to be here. CEO of Roy Farms, 115-ish, 20-year farming organization here in the Yakima Valley, and been back full time. I've been around it since I was a kid. Been around it in a managerial sense for the last 15 years. So yeah.
Michael, do you ever have any concerts on the farm?
Ooh, on the farm. We've not had concerts on the farm, unfortunately, but I think about it often. I think how cool it'd be.
Who would headline the show?
Oh, man. Well, if I was going to take low-hanging, what?
No, we have to talk about this because I actually pitched something to Tyler just the other day. So, but I'll let you finish your thought.
That would be amazing.
Low-hanging fruit. I mean, Cody Beebe and the Crooks are kind of a friend. But if I was going to pick right now, it'd probably be Dead Mouse. I've been listening to Veldt a lot.
That'd be a fun show on a farm.
Yeah.
So, Ross, what conversation were you and Tyler having?
Well, for those that don't know, this is Timbo Week in Los Angeles. It only comes once a year. But it's Highland Park's celebration of their absolutely fabulous flagship beer, Timbo. Earlier in the week, they released a collaborative brew with the Emerson brothers, who are they're from Fruitvale, Washington, if I remember right. But they're out there by Yak, and their family has like 1,600 acres, dude. And they were just two brothers and had a garage band out there in the 70s. And it is absolutely solid gold that never got discovered. They're having they're having a moment years later. And, Tyler was a part of that. And I said, how cool would it? I said, do you know if they still live up there? It'd be so cool to have them come play a show at a hop farm.
Yeah, we got to find out. That would be so rad.
Yes.
They're this great band. I think they only put out one album called Dreamin' Wild. Just kind of did themselves, and until recently, just only crate diggers found it, and it's kind of become infamous. And I think they just had Light in the Attic Records does a lot of represses, and that's who we collab with. But yeah, that'd be so cool to see on a farm.
Well, very cool. Enough of music for today. So let's dive in. And Ross, this topic was your idea. I'd love for you to define what future proofing means to you, and on a general level, why is it important that we have this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's I think we'll all agree, first of all, that it's maybe an unattainable thing because we don't necessarily know what to expect in the future. But it's good to always be aware of what trajectory you think your market is on. And I think everybody collected here on this panel can speak to the trajectory of the industry from a place of expertise and a place of knowledge and a place of insight. I thought it'd be really cool to gather this group of voices to kind of have that conversation. First of all, we know the market is kind of contracting, or it's changing, or consumption habits have changed. So, one of the first places I thought would be a really natural place to start off was, all of the different ways we have seen consumption change, whether that's the global pandemic and people interacting more with themselves on a health-based level, or whether experiences like that cause introspection because it comes so close to mortality. Not that I want to drive this conversation off into darkness, but it's an interesting conversation to have, and I think all of us are also coming from different geographic locations where we all, in addition to where we sit in the industry, have an interesting perspective on it because of that as well. So yeah, in general though, I think future proofing is just being aware of changes, being aware of the pathways forward that resonate with you, that are resonant with your brand and what you're trying to communicate, your mission, and also your values. So really respect everybody's brands and values on this panel. So I thought it'd be a really good set to bring together.
No, absolutely. So everyone else, when Ross reached out to you about this concept, like, why did you feel it was something you wanted to sit on and talk about? And anybody can jump right on in.
I mean, Ross, I think I might have said yes before you even told me what it was. It's just like, you want to do something? Heck yeah, you rule. Okay. Ross is such a rad dude. But I mean, that is pretty much a lot of my job is not necessarily trying to come up with the next new thing, but being aware of what's trending either here in LA or elsewhere, and if those trends align with kind of what we think will fit in our brand, or just messing around with stuff, even if I don't want to do it, just to see if I can.
Now, Adrian or Michael, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I was very similar. I think I said yes before I even knew really what we were going to be talking about. But as I chewed on the conversation over the last few weeks, I mean, it is a really important conversation to be a part of, because future-proofing the brewery, while it's not necessarily future-proofing the farm, it does relate to us, because the breweries are our customers. If they're healthy and we're in alignment with them, then it ultimately benefits us. And we as Roy Farms want to see as healthy of a supply chain as possible, and the most alignment possible. So it's an important conversation to have.
Thanks, Michael. And Adrian, how about you? Why is this important to talk about from your perspective?
Yeah, it's just our industry is changing so much, and kind of when Ross reached out very similarly, I was like, yeah, let's what do you guys want to talk about? And yeah, sustainability and those kinds of initiatives, right? It's important that we lead those movements and kind of look at different opportunities to whether it's yield related or just a really cool concept to lead the innovation in our respective industries in that sense. So it's cool, like Ross said, that we're all from different parts of the country and looking at things from a different perspective too in our own market. So was very open to the conversation today.
Absolutely. And there's so many different topic areas we could dive into, but let's start with changing customer demands. I'd love to hear from each one of you on, how is changing customer demands impacting your operation, and how are you responding? For all these questions, take them wherever you like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think trend, at least in our region, I feel like we noticed that people shopping for ABV and very flavor forward um, beers or brands. I mean, I think craft beers always led kind of higher quality and more robust flavor profiles. I think the boom of seltzer helped accelerate sort of flavor forward and kind of whether it's mango or strawberry or whatever it might be, right? It I think it accelerated that trend to looking for even more robust products, and I think the seltzer opened up a new world with RTDs, different RTDs with canned cocktails, and being able to adjust and adapt to not only make beer products, but these kind of beyond beer category type things. And then you have on the polar opposite side of the spectrum is the better for you target, where NA beer is just blowing up as well. So you kind of have both sides of the spectrum of higher alcohol and very flavor forward, with a boom and more conscious of better for you type products and NA beers that um, I feel like was really led by Athletic initially, and you have so many options too that everyone's getting in on. It's a very interesting time for sure.
Adrian, look at flavor profiles you and Blue Point are doing. Is there anything that your customers are craving that's really standing out from what you're brewing and making these days?
Yeah, currently our response has been a beer called Imperial Sunshine, and it's a 9.6% Imperial Blonde Ale with oranges, and it's something that we initially brewed for the Florida market as an exclusive, and it had an amazing response, and we just couldn't keep it locked down in that region, and it's been something that looking for something that had the drinkability of a 5 or 6% blonde ale, but kind of really inspired by Belgian triple in that sense, like a higher alcohol blonde beer, but doing it without that yeast strain was very challenging. But that's something that we've championed and try to make our own without maybe going the Belgian route or necessarily taking it as a beyond beer angle, where we could have gone to seltzer or something like that, right? With the same thought in mind.
Awesome, thank you. No, Tyler, how about you? How are changing customer demands impacting Highland Park, and how are you responding?
I mean, keep adding more hops to stuff. I feel like for example, Timbo, as Ross mentioned, is our West Coast Pilsner, and last year for Timbo Week, someone's like, "Let's do double dry hop Timbo." It's like, I don't know if that's gonna work. It's so well balanced and drinkable, and then we did it, and it was like, oh, I was way wrong. This rules. This is so good. It seems like we're double dry hopping everything a lot more these days. It's like just more intense flavors across the board, I feel like. And then our water game is really growing as well, which is kind of the opposite. So yeah, a lot of intense flavors or just really fine-tuned mellow flavors.
That's interesting to hear you both say that. Like, we've not had this I've not had this conversation with either of you, but it's interesting to hear that it sounds like there's a fork in the road for the consumer, and that there's one segment that's going for super high amplitude, super big flavor, higher ABV, and that there's a vast yawning gap between the two. Like, do you think that middle ground is like less than it was? Like,
Ross, I think you're describing a convenience store where you can buy like a 19.2 of something 10%, and the Athletic right next to it. Really,
yeah. I mean, honestly, like I am aware, but I don't go shop stuff out as much as maybe I should. But I feel like I still see things that are what I would call representative of like the core middle, right, of beer, stuff like these Sierra Nevada Deschutes or whatever, and like you still see some of those flagships in there, but how much of that do you think that middle ground makes up now in what you guys are doing?
I mean, I guess Timba or West Coast Pilsner is kind of in the middle. I guess, yeah, it's in the middle. It's 5.8. But like, we kind of have to push pale ales. They don't do great, but I love making them. So it's usually like, I'll use that as an excuse to, if it's a new hop or something like that, which kind of drives excitement. But yeah, if we just came out with a pretty like well-made pale ale without any flashes, it at least in our market, it just doesn't do so hot.
I feel like it's interesting, or like as an on-premise play at the pub, I think those tend to do pretty well, where not everyone's necessarily looking to shop for a ABV there, where they want to have a few to be able to get home. But when it comes to off-premise, I feel like it's like at the grocery store or a C-store, it's kind of, if it's not super high ABV or non-alc, and this is, I think extreme examples. I wouldn't say that's all people are shopping for. That's what I'm suggesting, but it's almost like there's some noise in the middle where those have always been the options, I guess. So I guess maybe more recently, the trends and more exciting opportunities are sort of those two sides. Although I'd say the middle is still the majority. That's definitely the case. And it's definitely what I pick up is the middle majority. But it's interesting to see that those trends and kind of how they're skewing towards both ends more and more, where you're shopping for ABV to get the best bang for your buck, or just want something that tastes really great and you can have a few of and go about your day.
And I guess the shopping in the middle ground is harder too, because there's just more and more options. So, you know what you're getting with like a double IPA or whatever. Whereas in the middle, there's so much that's like, I don't know which to pick.
That's such a simple,
I would say that coming at it from a little bit different perspective on, the consumer's desire for new and flavorful has impacted the farm pretty substantially over the years. I was fortunate to come back to the ranch during the days of the commodity days, and it was all CTZ. We're trading on a global scale, and it was basically just cost of production and getting it into the supply chain efficiently. And as much good as the craft beer movement has brought the hop industry in general, it's also created a lot of cost and to some degree dysfunction and inefficiencies in trying to chase this newness and this desire for more flavor, new flavor. Breeding programs are very expensive to run. It's a numbers game. You don't know when you're going to hit one of these things. And then all these proprietary genetics that are in the marketplace now are controlled by one of a few different groups. And if one group gets a hit and then the beer industry invests in that variety, well, it could be a good thing. It might not be that great of a thing for the industry as a whole if dollars start flowing back to one entity within that overall, hop industry.
So not to make this about farms because we're talking about breweries, but what do we do about farms? So as a farmer, like how are you addressing it? Like how are you getting ahead of the time? And also, is that something that hops can do now too? Just because, again, I think people's access to flavor and information and all of it. Like I was talking about the other day, from a small town in Washington. Like God love my parents, but I didn't have a mango until I was like 20 something, right? You know what I mean? Like we come from a different flavor vernacular, and that's generational. I mean that, dude. Like our Starburst flavors were different. Our Skittles packs were different. people's tastes change so rapidly, and that's informed by this access to kind of everything all times or whatever. And what do you think that looks like from the farm side to catch up with that?
Well, it's an interesting word, catch up. I don't know if we'll ever catch up, but I mean, positioning wise, we're one of the few independent farms that have, processing abilities, growing abilities. We have a breeding program. So we have most of the pieces where it's been challenging for us specifically as a farm is around either access to certain varietals, because like I said, if one group has the winning variety, we as, let's say, a marketer or as a grower, direct relationship to brewer farm may not have access to that, or we may be able to grow it. Like, for an example, not to beat up on Citra, but we're probably one of the largest Citra growers in the industry, but we cannot sell it over our sales desk. Well, okay, correction. We do have a distribution agreement from Haas on that. I might get anyway, but we have limitations, right? And they box you into a certain segment of the market that you can operate in basically on what your buyback price is. So anyway, I could probably spend an hour just on that. But the other way we're positioning ourselves in terms of, we have our own breeding program. So we are breeding for new, we're breeding for different. But like I said, that's a pretty inefficient process, and the cost involved in scaling up these flavors essentially is pretty high. The risk is extremely high. And you don't really know if it's going to take off in the market or not. And then so you end up adding cost on top of cost. We need to go back and replant into a new variety because the previous one didn't hit. And so the other way that we're looking at that is insulating ourselves from kind of the new tech part of the business by bringing things on ourselves, so that, Abstrax is a great example, like trying to collaborate with Abstrax on this stuff. We're kind of looking at it from both angles. Well, we can attack it from the breeding program side, or we can attack it from kind of the processing side, and we can have these value-added products. And basically, I don't want to get shut off from any sort of one avenue in the marketplace. So, yeah.
That's a good thought, Michael. And I guess looking at the flavor profiles that you're selling the most of right now, I'd love to hear what those are. Then planning for the future with breeding programs, what are you thinking is going to be the next big hit?
Personally, I don't think that we're going to see another Citra, because it was in the pipeline early and it was right place, right time. And so I think that these new varieties coming out of the breeding programs will probably command a certain percentage of the market if they solve a problem, is kind of where my mind's at. So, we need flavor and we need these and we need new, but I think we also need to be thinking from a breeding program's perspective, like, what are we solving for? Like, is it a new beer style? Is it, what is it? Coming at it with like more depth than just, it's new and it's different. Like, right. It's like smells and tastes like bubble gum. Like, it's like, all right, well, I don't know. Where does that fit in? Right. Instead of just shotgunning the stuff out, trying to think about it more intently.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how we can position these relationships between farmers and breweries to benefit each other as we, face these challenges. I know Ross and Michael, you kind of talked about some collaboration there, but Michael and Tyler and Adrian, what does it look like from the farm to brewery side of things?
I know this is going to be my first year. I think I'm going to go for selection next year, but Bob, our owner, every time he goes up, he tries to meet with more farmers than anybody else, because he really feels you get the most impact and get to know, who's behind all this. And I think the closer brewers can be with the farmers, you're going to get a better product, because we know what we want, but we don't necessarily know what that comes about. It's the opposite with the farmers. They know how to make all this stuff, grow it all, and if we can interact and give feedback, what really exciting to us, then I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what you said, Tyler, right? The better relationships we can have with the farmers, the the better those conversations can be as we try to figure out what we're trying to solve for, right? And sometimes it's tough to figure out what we're trying to solve for with an ever-changing market and what consumers want, right? We do the best we can to try to predict that. But yeah, as far as like working with you, Ross, on just downstream hop products too, and I haven't worked with you too much, Mike, but I'm looking forward to. I know we do bring your hops in, but yeah, I think that's it's only positive if we're continuing the conversation and trying to drive those kinds of things together.
Yeah, it's one of the things I really appreciate about the space that we occupy in this, and kind of from, I guess, where we're approaching the industry, because we're seeing that there is a paradigm shift, and there's like new conversations happening within the industry that maybe haven't been happening before, and it's kind of cool. I liken it something to like the fair trade movement in coffee supply, where there's a little bit more transparency and openness and interaction with the farmer, and knowing how the sausage is made rather than being a black box. I think that's kind of cool, and I actually think that's where ultimately, like, the grand changes that Mike was talking about, where someone says, "I want bubblegum hop" or whatever, and then you get to hash out what the value proposition is and what's that solving for, maybe what the inspiration is and why. And like, that's where all of the good stuff comes from, and I don't feel like there's a whole lot of dialogue. I feel like it's pretty one way. I feel like that from now, getting that access to things, and I think we're a part of that too. But like, I know we're a part of that because we get guys like you that come to us and say, "Can we do this? Is this a possibility? Because we know this, but this has been a limitation to this point." So I think we're keenly aware of that, but we're also trying to honor the industry as well and figure out how to do right by it, and kind of also optimize as best we can this industry for our time. So it's a really cool challenge to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely say that direct communication, dialogue is really important. As small as the industry is, it's amazing how muddled things can get when there's multiple parties involved. And sometimes all it takes is one more than two. So the more that those relationships can be direct and cultivated over time, the better. I've seen this over and over again, because there's always, usually in our part, I would say more always, but a willingness to try and problem solve and figure out solutions over the long term, because these are long-term businesses that we're running here. They're family farms. They've been here for a long time. We're not turning and burning anything. It's at the root of everything is the relationship. And I realized too, I didn't clearly respond to your question about what's the new flavor. Ultimately, I don't know what the new flavor is, but I will say I got to put a plug in for Dank Strawberry and Strata, because I really like that one. So
We love
one flavor profile to dive into for sure. Now, there's another concept I think is going to be really interesting from all of you. Let's talk about sustainability for a moment. So why is it more important than ever, in your opinion, for breweries and industry partners to focus on this?
Yeah, I think year to year, right, we're seeing different crop yields fluctuate from year to year. So we need to be flexible and evaluating different options as things happen. And it's important to maintain a consistency in our brands as well. And those conversations with you guys are important to help create those sustainable solutions.
Adrian, what are a couple of examples of ways you aim to be more sustainable at Blue Point?
Well, we definitely looked into sort of the cryogenic pellet in that sense. Some of the Incognito and Salvo hop products are something that we've looked at too, where, I mean, it's helped us with yields and also just the expression and hop flavor and aroma in these products are really attractive to us. And I think also just from carbon footprint in that sense, just storage and not only about yields and stuff like that, but that has an impact on our business too. So I think full circle, I think it makes sense to explore these kinds of options more and more, but not necessarily a solution to replace pellets in that expression, because I still think there's value added in keeping that in our beers, and whether it's a traditional thought or just keeping that green material in those products too.
Tyler?
Yeah, I think, well, there's just I think we have a responsibility, at least that's how we feel at our brewery, like, try and improve this plant, and not, just do what we can and then we're out, and future generations be damned. I think it's important for us to care about where everything's going. And I think, there's obviously cost benefits to these sort of things, but also just social benefits as well. And especially with some of these new hop products, you just get different experiences, which is cool. I'm always trying to find new fun ways to, get those hop flavors out. But I totally agree with you, Adrian. I don't think we can ever replace hops. It's just not possible. But there's always little tweaks and stuff we can do to improve and be a little more efficient and all that.
Tyler, in my weird position in this industry, I have a lot of conversation. It's been fun to look at the past few years of the terms that have kind of come up more than others. Like, maybe 5 years ago, we started to see data in more conversations. Then we started to see a lot more about technology. I feel like sustainability, I hate to say, is a buzzword we're hearing a lot right now. Why do you think we're having more talks about sustainability? And is it something that's just like a buzzword we're using right now, or people actually going to put the work in?
I think one, people are, I think, hopefully are just trying to be better about this, but also everything's getting way more expensive. And so, like, even things like CO2, we haven't implemented anything yet, but it's like I feel kind of dumb just now realizing this, but a lot of where we use CO2, we don't need it. It can be some other gas, like nitrogen or something, that push beer from one tank to the other or something like that. And yeah, CO2 use is not great for the environment. We just switched CO2 suppliers, and I just watched them empty a whole tank into the sky. I was like, oh, terrible. We could have thought this through a little bit, used it first, but I think cost is not a sexy way of looking at it, but I think that's definitely a driving force too.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be more sustainable. Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh man, sustainability is something that has been near and dear to my heart for many years. I've become a little jaded recently, but it's not gone. The love's not gone. So yeah, I mean, just being that essentially our revenue comes from the dirt, right? We're very focused on sustainability around all aspects of the farm: soil, water, energy. The water is probably one of the biggest ones we put a lot of effort into over the years, because in the Yakima Valley and in most regions outside of Oregon, and even Oregon uses a lot of supplemental irrigation, but water, you can't grow these crops without water. So in some cases, the water rights are senior water rights, where essentially they don't get cut unless there's some major catastrophe. In other cases, they're junior water rights that could get cut if there's, just a mediocre shift in things. And so we want to try and insulate ourselves from that, be responsible water users, lower the risk profile. And so we put a lot of time and energy and money into trying to look at different ways to measure the actual demand of the plant and then meet it. That also helps out with yields, because if we can keep the plants out of stress, they're more consistent from year to year. Outside of water and the focus on that, we're one of the only, actually, I think we're the only ones that are pelletizing at time of harvest. So anything that we can do, some of the proprietary genetics we can't do because we have to have a processing license. They won't give it to us, but anything that we can, we're pelletizing at time of harvest, skipping the bale. All of the pelleting facilities, we have 2 of them, are offset with solar energy. We're B Corp certified, so that's kind of where we're looking at the people side of things a little bit more. We're 100% salmon safe certified across the whole ranch, so protecting waterways. Yeah, but we essentially look like a NASCAR with all the certifications. Organic, we're the largest organic or hops grower, but that market's challenging. Yeah, trying to do a lot.
Great insight there, Michael. Now, Ross, how about you? I would love to hear your thoughts on why sustainability is vital right now.
Oh, man. It's funny. I think it's just, this is one of the things where I think that geographical orientation kind of informs a lot of where I sit on it. And I think maybe Mike, too, feels the same way, being a son of the Northwest. But, we've seen how the environment is changing, has changed. It's funny, Mike said it earlier, this is, 115, 120 year family farm. And we've had conversations before. He's like, hey, man, I'm here for the next 100 years. This farm is here for the next 100 years. So I think being here in the Northwest, kind of in the cradle of where these plants are grown, I'm a lot closer actually to the Willamette Valley than I am to Yakima, but the challenges that we've had with fires, the challenges that we're starting to see now, they always haven't been something of a challenge in Yakima with water. It's all really, really valid. And a lot of the conversations I have with a lot of different people across a very, very wide breadth of this industry, kind of all levels of it, are talking about and aware of times of austerity. Maybe not even times of austerity, but maybe a social responsibility to do what we can while we can to steward it in the best fashion. So, again, I think we're coming into this from a pretty unique place as an organization. We have a pretty unique perspective on that too. I think it's something that's been lacking, I guess, not necessarily lacking, but it seems like everybody is more motivated to address these issues now and are more able to address these problems through the technological advancements that are kind of coming to the industry. And I think that's really, really cool. But for us, some of the novel processes we do to process hops and partnered with Michael and the farm on show pretty great potential for saving on that upstream. Actually, I've been doing a lot to kind of quantify what that looks like upstream at the farm level, where we're doing things like fresh freezing instead of kilning, what the cost benefits are there, different form factors like powders versus liquid, shipping and shelf stability and all the rest of it. So we're well aware of how things are changing or how we think they're changing, and we're just going to try and rise to meet those challenges with everybody else. Hopefully just deliver cool stuff to play with it.
It's fun to mess around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, Ross, I'd like to kind of keep going with that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what you're doing at Abstrax and how, these technological advancements are truly changing the landscape. And for everyone, I'd love to hear what technological advancements you believe are really going to make a difference and we should be prepared for moving forward.
So I always like to say Abstrax is a technology company that produces solutions for many different industries, but really do focus on the brewing industry. So that initially took the shape of variety-specific hop flavors that have been used to great effect in the industry, that were positioned as a more sustainable, also way more cost-effective dry hopping addition. Core to what we do at Abstrax is our analytical capabilities. They are genuinely world-class, and there's nobody else in the industry that can compete with us on the analytical front, and that's something I'm always proud to bring up. That is what sets us apart. And not being tied to any sense of tradition or beholden to any processes except to do the absolute best. Very early on in my tenure at Abstrax, I remember a decision being made that just long and short of it was whatever is best for the client is what we're going to provide them. I'm super proud that we still deliver that. So functionally, flavor solutions, and then of hops and cannabis flavors. We also have pushed into the extraction space as well, are doing so in partnership with the Roy Farms folks. We, again, being not beholden to any sense of tradition or history or necessity to anything but to do the best, we've really sought out have created a new extraction protocol that's delivering really, really cool results for us. Products that are not necessarily similar to anything that's out there, and we're really proud of them. So really it's just a new extraction process and a different secondary refinement process to deliver both whirlpool and cold side aroma addition from both traditionally processed kiln material and fresh frozen, like I'd mentioned we had done earlier. So the fresh frozen extractions are absolutely mind-bending. I think they're really, really cool. Actually, Tyler is one of the people that's played around most with those out of anybody in the country, actually. But they're really cool. And again, outside of being a new thing or a new flavor of the week or whatever, we think there's a utility to what we can do with product on the market to upcycle it, to stabilize it, to present it in a different format than aging hops. So we're really stoked to bring that. Super stoked to be doing it with Roy Farms folks. Again, like for us, being in alignment with organizations and with people on a values level and an organizational level is really important. I think Roy Farms sees that. They've clearly been our biggest advocate in the hop space, so it means a lot to us. I think that partnership will yield a lot of extra years.
Yeah, I love, like, anytime I'm like, hey, I have a weird question, but have you guys ever thought about doing this? I think every time you're like, oh my gosh, we just started doing this. It's like a week from like wrapping it up. I'm like, how do you always like predict what I'm thinking is a crazy idea? Like, you might have that in a week or two. Like, it's like kind of a punk rock, like almost disruptive, just thinking about things completely different, which is just super fun and refreshing.
Yeah, like it is punk rock, man. We move differently and in a more fleet-footed way than large organizations that are indentured to the industry can, and it's pretty cool. So, and not for nothing too, what we do on the cannabis side of our business is such a massive cheat code on what we do in flavor work. Like there's an entire division of our business that we really haven't put the lights on yet, but it's a whole series of flavors that everybody knows and are aware of and have application and stuff that, I mean, probably, like, this is another one of those things, man. You give it 3 weeks, maybe you're going to reach out to me about one of them, like condensed milk or something like that. Yeah, it's coming for that collection. So it's kind of cool. It reminds me a lot of when I was like a swanky bartender. I would just go into the walk-in and I would look for the coolest ingredients, the stuff that I had never seen before, and I'd chew on it and I'd smell it and I'd do whatever to like make it make sense in my world. And now I get to do the same at Abstrax in both the hops and cannabis, but also just flavors. Like we do incredible flavor work in general. So, things like a lychee jelly or, a really rad pink guava or whatever, or things that I get to like magpie back to the brewing division and say like, this is really cool. I think this is going to fit a need for us. So it's really cool, man. I will say, I think a lot of that like predictive whatever is just because we just have that momentum. And we're flavor nerds. We seek out the best weed. We seek out the weirdest fruits. We seek out cool beer. Like that's the fun of the job that keeps us stoked.
And Ross, you talk about that mentality, that punk rock mentality, where you can just really be agile, spitting out these crazy ideas and innovating pretty quickly. Looking at small breweries all the way to large breweries, who has the advantage in being prepared for the future? Or does each have their own unique advantages based off their unique place?
Yeah, I think that's kind of it's a cool question, a conversation to have with the group assembled here, and that was like by design, right? Like I think Blue Point is a great example of what we might consider a more macro craft brewery or someone that operates in a larger organization, right? And like Highland Park is as punk rock as it gets. Like that's just it is. Not that there's any lack of soul at Blue Point, but it's a different presentation and it's a different pathway to get there. I think both have their place as long as the story comes from a real place. Like it's coming from an authentic place. Now it's like overwrought word or whatever, but I think that's also why the people here on this panel are here. Is there's a sense of authenticity about the brand or the story they're trying to communicate. And I think that's what matters most because, as always, like people speak with their dollars. And in a market that's in such flux, such disruption or whatever, you have to kind of be more than what you're making. And you have to represent something to those people. So I think everybody has a place. I do think there'll be some pretty heavy attrition, though, over the next few years. And honestly, it's what we see in cannabis, too, that the headiest of the heady, the hardest to find and sort of like sit right alongside something you can find in every plaid pantry across North America. So it's weird. I think there's always going to be space for both. I think there's going to be a little bit of a shakeup. I think the people that are best prepared doesn't really matter who they are organizationally, but it's about how willing they are to change.
Good
insight. And I think we can benefit differently. Like, for example, the very first time we used terpenes was for this super, I think it was under 4 ABV beer. And all our beers were really trying to get out and drink fresh. Like, we don't want beer. Stability is not something we're really concerned with. But that beer that we made, I think we sometimes use older hoppy beer in mixed culture to blend. We think it comes with really cool flavors. So tasted with kegs, and then we packed the taste, and it was like, this is old, and it's like gotten a little bit better somehow. So I think large breweries that have bigger distribution and a need for that sort of thing really benefit far more than we were. But I think it's fun for us to just like always try new stuff. So there's benefits that benefit bigger breweries and smaller breweries.
Yeah, for what it's worth, too, that beer, Good Sport, that he's talking about was / is my platonic ideal of both a beer and how to deploy our product. It was a really low ABV hoppy lager, and it absolutely ripped. That is truly one of my top 5 favorites, regardless of whether it had our stuff in it. That was just a ripper of a beer, and it's super cool. I remember him going through this process of it aging out, and us being like, kind of like cavemen that had discovered fire, right? And then afterwards, you're like, oh my God, there's coals too. What do we do with these? And so it was like, well, there's a shelf life implication too, and this is another confirmation of that. It's so cool. So we're very, very excited.
Cool. Now, Michael, I'd like to go back to the ranch and kind of hear how technological advancements are changing from your perspective.
How they're changing, or how the changes are impacting us, or both?
Well, let's hear a little of both. Dive in.
Well, yeah, I mean, to start off, I think that we're going, if we're not in it already, we're going into a phase of efficiency. And I think all the pressures throughout the supply chain, farm level, brewing level, retail, it's going to force those conversations. How can we be more efficient? And so in a lot of cases, we have to attack that through technology, because at a farm level, you know, its progress is slower. To some degree, you could say the dollars are higher to try and influence it through a breeding program, or let's say through soil health or something like that. And so I think that's gonna, I mean, it's already been a focus with like Incognito, Spectrum, Cryo, CGX, like run down the list, right, of anything beyond T90. And so, you know, there's been this consistent chasing of efficiency, but I think that conversation is even going to get heightened, and it's gonna be more in these upcoming years. So we're really keyed into that, and so there's a need, and so we're positioning ourselves and asking questions, and then that's kind of a more of a look forward. Now, currently, and in these years past, you know, technology, whether it's through a new variety or through a merchant, let's say managed, I won't use the word controlled, I'll use the word managed, merchant managed process. It for us in particular, and we're kind of a unique case because, you know, we're independent, we sell direct to the brewery, and we have these different layers. Whereas in most of the time, these layers are found in like a bigger organization. And so, like I said, if the technology, you know, is controlled or managed or gets developed in a certain area, it could have a negative impact on our business model, because we might not have access to that technology right away or ever. And so it's created another layer of something to think about, being having part of our business be direct to brewer. Now we have to think about, okay, beyond just the varieties, what services are we offering? What products are we offering? What technology are we offering? And it's just like another layer of something to plan for and strategize about.
Michael, is the future going to be more complicated?
If history repeats itself, every year is more complicated than the last for one reason or another. So I would have to guess yes.
So I'm really excited to hear all your feedback on this one, because it's something we've kind of really touched on throughout the conversation, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper. So Ross, I'd love for you to kick us off. You know, how much of a brand is core values and how much is core products?
Ooh, man. For me personally, it is absolutely 50-50. Like it is half who you are as an organization, and half what you make. Like I am such a nerd about brand and brand building, what they represent, what they're trying to communicate. So for me personally, it's a little bit of both. And actually, like, it may even be a little bit less the product. It's like the more I'm rolling it around, it's like maybe 60-40 or 70-30 ethic over product, because I think that, you know, there's a lot of really terrible music I've gone to support because I really feel the ethic of the creator, right? Like, you know, or art that maybe doesn't necessarily have the same impact with everybody, but I think it's beautiful. So maybe a little more on that side. But I think, and I think honestly, that's kind of the math that's changing in the market too, and how people are consuming. And I think, again, brands that really are sticking out or getting resonance with people are, they're sticking that landing, you know, they're figuring out where the Venn diagram overlap is and where they fit into it. So I think for some things it's different. Music is different than hops, but yeah, I would say somewhere around 60-40 probably.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ross. Like brand to me, it's about your core values, and long term it has to be, right. So staying true to your brand while being flexible to consumer demands is another thing. But I think your core products should be your marketing strategy to tell the story of your brand and what your values are, right. And
yes, things don't achieve like iconic status with artifice, right? Like, or by changing, really. Like, Coca-Cola Classic is Coca-Cola Classic. Well, there's probably been a number of tweaks to the recipe in our lifetimes, even, or whatever. The way it presents, what it represents, is always going to be that. Say like Sierra Nevada, right, or Sam Adams, like their core. It's a part of the. That's maybe bad examples. Some better than the other, but again, that ethic and what the brand represents, I think, is what sells me a lot of times. And then honestly, in beer too, like aesthetics has come such a long way with the prevalence of like on-demand printing for cans and stuff, and so I think that actually is more of a part of the conversation in beer now than it was previously. And I think that's something we're really aware of at Abstrax too, because we don't want our products to look like the quote unquote old way of hops or whatever. Like, we're aware that brand is actually a part of the service that we provide to people who buy our stuff. Like, I want it to look cool and have a cool user interface when it arrives with my friends in Highland Park or Blue Point or whatever. So that is very important to us.
Tyler, how about you? What are your thoughts on core brands and core values?
I'm all about values. I mean, I think that's one thing about the brewing industry in general is like there is a very kind of direct interface. There's a lot less hidden. You kind of get to know your local breweries. You get to know, people working there. I was an engineer for 10 years. Hated it, and it's like I need to do something where I can be creative and interact with people that enjoy what they're doing and enjoy, spreading this to other people. And I think that's what's so special about craft beer is it is sometimes too much, but it is very it's a personal thing. So I think the core values are and branding obviously is massively important too. But I tend to lean towards like I know who makes this, or I respect what they're doing. Then has to taste good too. But
I think all of us on this panel pretty much align on what we're talking about right now. But are we the exception? Or are we becoming the rule?
That's tough, because I always like to think that I'm aware of the fact that like I'm kind of an architect and I'm not designing the house for myself to live in. But I think actually the whole change in consumption speaks to maybe we're not alone in this conversation, right? I think there's a trickle down too. I think that comes through people's awareness of what different brands are up to, right? And again, I think this flow of information stuff informs that. So maybe now more than ever.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. Now, I've got one final question for you all. This conversation has been really fun because it's been very philosophical. It's been really neat to hear your opinions on changes and how we can best prepare. But for everyone listening right now, one thing we like to do at all these panels is have some sort of actionable takeaway that they can do right now. So I'd love to go around in a circle. Ross, we'll begin with you because you started things off. Of, what others need to do to prepare for the future right now. If you could offer one piece of advice, one action item, what would that be besides buy Abstract hops?
I mean, just listen. Just listen from an open place and don't fear change. Like, I think openness to change and a willingness to change is what suits everyone best, because there is no actual way to prepare for it. So all you can do is understand that it will change, and you're either going to be a part of it or you won't. So I encourage people to be a part of it and be open to being a part of that change.
Awesome. And no final question for you, Ross, the other poster on the wall. What's that recommendation?
Oh, actually that's the painting that is literally it's funny, they talk about aesthetics or whatever. Back in my young punk rock days, I used to go where all the punk rock kids got their hair cut. And this was at the barber's place. And I was too broke to afford it. And she asked the artist if I could have it. And that was like the first piece of proper art I ever got to own. And it's not great. It actually looks way better in this context, but it's like that perceived value thing. You know what I mean? Like the Hold Steady poster and that were both free. And they both create a response in me that's visceral, memories or whatever. So they still hang on my wall. It's weird.
Awesome. I love it. Now, Adrian, what's your takeaway?
To me, it's being very flexible and the ability to adapt, right? I think fail fast and just keep trying things until something works, right? I think sometimes it's very easy to be a little too emotionally attached to things that you make, and if they aren't a home run every time, you need to be able to look past it and just keep trying and be consumer first. If you be consumer first, but be authentic to yourself and your brand, and things should click for you if you do that, I think.
Sure hope so. Thanks, Adrian. And Tyler?
I mean, I feel like mine's essentially the same. I've always had a rule: never say you won't do something. I've seen so many breweries, I'm never going to make a hazy IPA. 2 years later, they're making hazy IPAs. I'm never going to make a seltzer. I'm never going to do this. And then I think that's a negative way to just go down with a sinking ship. I'm down to try anything, even if I don't like it. If I want to, that's what's fun to me is finding a way to take something that I might not be super into and making it my own, making it, Highland Park version of this, and definitely be willing to be like, no, that was a dud. Gotta move on. I think just be willing to try anything and be flexible.
Tyler, that's a philosophy that I also stay true to. I believe in trying anything once, because worst case, you fail, you learn. But best case, that crazy little idea might catch on and be the next big thing for you.
Yeah.
Love it. Michael, close us out. What's your takeaway from all this?
Well, first of all, I didn't get the chance to respond on the values or products one. So I'd have to agree with Ross. I think that to some degree, I think there's a split, and I'd love for it to be 70% values, 30% product, or 60% values, 40% product. I think it's the inverse of that, unfortunately, right now for us as a farm, and I see signs that it's trending the opposite way, which is encouraging. Takeaways. Man, I jotted down 2 notes kind of coming into this, and it was I just wrote down recipes and relationships, and I think to add a little bit more context to that, I think it's what hops you're using, what products you're using, who you partnered up with, what types of conversations are you having. Hopefully there are conversations happening, because I think communication is going to be a huge part moving forward. And then, similar to you guys, really big about being creative, evolving, really challenging yourself, being open. And then the other word that popped up in this conversation was authentic. I think you cannot lose that authenticity in it, or it's not meaningful.
Michael,
also buy more Azaka.
Yeah, Azaka and Strata. Yep, that's a takeaway. By those.
I love it. Well, the four of you have been so insightful from this past hour. So, Ross, huge thanks to you and AbstraxHops for all your support and this wonderful conversation, bringing us all together. Adrian, really enjoyed meeting you and learning from you today. Tyler, it's been fantastic, and I really hope I try that West Coast lager someday. And Michael, we got to put some dates on the calendar for that concert at your farm. Well, I appreciate you all. Thanks again. We'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Guys.